Hi, everyone. Jay Pollitt here, and I just want to start off by saying I really enjoyed last week's convocation, and I'm looking forward to working and learning from all of you as we begin Tier 2. So I'll go ahead and jump into this. The first thing that I learned from this week's reading is the concept of trait versus process leadership. I must admit, before being introduced to the idea of process leadership, I can confidently say that I always kind of viewed leadership as a trait. The author mentions two kind of characteristics that I know I've observed and at least said before that would help me define someone as a leader. For example, I'm not the most assertive person in certain situations, so I tend to view those people who are more outspoken and idea oriented as that natural leader of the group. Um, However, in my own process of leadership development, I've been focusing on being more assertive and utilizing my strengths in maybe other areas in a way to become the leader of my own personal area or professional group. This change in approach has made a tremendous impact on how and when I can become the leader in a given situation. I think just that this concept really speaks to the idea of process leadership that the author was mentioning. My personal example is evidence that leadership can be learned. It's also evidence that my leadership can emerge and be more prevalent in certain situations, which supports the author's point that leadership is a phenomenon that is dependent on the overall context of what is going on at that moment. Lastly, the concept that leadership can be viewed, it can be observed, learned, and developed is really encouraging to me. It's something I do believe in now. My default is to often focus on the negatives or the weaknesses or areas of improvement. Yet the concept of that it can be learned really stuck with me because it gives me encouragement that I can improve in the areas that I'm not really good at yet. The second concept from this week's readings that I thought was really interesting is the concept of assigned versus emergent leadership. While a title or position within an organizational chart is more obvious, the idea of emergent leadership really highlights the various factors and situations where leadership is present, even if it's unassigned. I really agree when the author cites communication behaviors as a major influence of emergent leadership. From my own experience as both a leader and someone who is being led, I agree that traits such as being verbally involved and listening and valuing others' opinions are traits that help get people behind you and trust you. Um, I also really enjoyed the concept of becoming the leader when you are most like the group prototype. At first, I thought this was really a long-term process within a group, yet I started thinking of examples where I've experienced this in my own professional environment. In the lens of the social identity theory, I can see examples where I was both the leader and the one being led. Finally, the article is reviewing the history of American higher education and the current challenges it faces, provided both new material and a great refresher for me. One area is how American higher education institutions and the national system itself is different from other nations. It was great to be reminded of how unique our higher education system is, from governance to finance, and from the diversity to the competition, both in the academic and even athletic sectors of the institution. Our colleges and universities are quite different from those of other nations. It's great to be reminded of how public and private colleges differ and how different sources of revenue are valued and relied upon, depending on public versus private. As autonomy becomes a more valuable and pursued aspect of governance and management, colleges and universities are asking less from the public sources of revenue and more. This will continue to shift the burden or the cost burden to the students and families of those through tuition and fees. This challenge is coupled with the need to recruit and retain more students from lower economic statuses, which creates quite the dilemma. Colleges and universities are relying more on tuition and fees from the student, yet they are trying to recruit more low-income students. One of the primary reasons why we have low completion rates of students from lower socioeconomic statuses is they can't afford. Cost is the major burden. Not to get on a soapbox, but we must do better at providing the necessary resources and support systems for all these students. And I really don't believe all of them can come from just the leaders at the very top of the higher education sector. We need leaders from all aspects of society and government to buy into this concept to help low-income families pay for college. regardless of whatever reason they use to oppose it. This is a topic that gets me fired up, so I won't get on a soapbox but I'll simply just end my video by stating that I highly enjoyed this week's reading, and I look forward to your responses. Thank you.